What we just watched is the intro for one particular indie game that caught my attention in 2014. This game, Risk of Rain, is an action platforming game developed by Hopu Game Studios and published by Chucklefish. It released on Steam in late 2013 to wide success. As a brief overview of its gameplay, it incorporates exploration aspects of games like Metroid and Castlevania, and roguelite elements from games such as Dead Cells and Binding of Isaac. You play as a survivor of a crashed delivery ship on an alien planet where you use the tools left from delivery crates to defend yourself. You have two goals: 1, to escape the planet by making your way back to the bridge of your destroyed ship, and 2, to survive. As you can see, Risk of Rain is a 2D side-scrolling game, meaning that as you play the game, you are only seeing a cross-section of the 3D world around you, adding to the unique feel and art style of the game. One of the main features this game has versus others in its genre is the game's focus on time. In the top right corner of the screen, you can see a timer along with a difficulty bar that is ever increasing. Risk of Rain is designed so time and speed of play are the most important factors in determining how hard the game is. As you play the game, and the timer progresses, the game will spawn harder and harder enemies for you to fight. Pay attention to this clip where we listen to the song titled Monsoon. Pay close attention to how the song both gets the gamer pumped up to move fast and stay quick while immersing them in the game world around them. As you can hear the song play behind the gameplay shown, imagine to yourself, what if I was there? What would I want to be playing in the background as I struggle to fight off alien creatures? Despite the challenges to immersion the 2D medium brings, this soundtrack envelops the player right into the action. Keep an ear out for other sound effects as the game is playing. What can you hear? Some notable ones are the sound of creatures spawning around you, and the sound of the character's weapons hitting the creatures. These sounds are not played in stereo, regardless of the audio setup you might have. These special effects are only played in mono, which takes away from the immersion factor while playing. As the stage comes to an end, listen for how the soundtrack switches gears and begins to play a different song. This new song signals the beginning of a boss fight and a more intense section of gameplay. Towards the second quarter of 2019, Risk of Rain 2 was released in early access on Steam. Early access meaning that it is available to purchase with the understanding that it is a work in progress. New content in the form of gameplay options, enemies, and new songs are added with each update. To much exclamation, much of the core elements of gameplay and sound design remain the same as its predecessors, except for one difference. Risk of Rain 2 is now developed in a 3D world as a third-person shooter. With this new, quote, dimension to consider, how does Risk of Rain 1's sound design philosophy hold up? The goal of Risk of Rain 2's soundtrack is once again to immerse the player in the world they find themselves in. The game starts this off with having the interactions within the menu move through the opening world and affecting the main theme playing behind it. Listen to how moving through submenus will cause a different arrangement of the main theme to play as to give this menu a more secluded feel, like what is shown visually. As this version of the main theme is playing, it uses stereoscopic panning on the underlying rhythm to give the music an expansive feeling, immersing the player in the gameplay to come. With the change to 3D, sound effects for the gameplay has changed as well. All environmental or ambient sound effects, such as monsters spawning around you or a chest opening, has now been rendered in 3D. Individually, each of these small effects are not much, but when added and stacked together they deliver a very real and captivating experience. Pay attention in this clip. During the clip playing now, you can hear the sounds of creatures being defeated all around the player, encouraging the gamer to look around themselves, developing the need for spatial awareness. This right there is what is known as 3D audio. For the player to hear with the aid of headphones, a surround sound experience directly synced with gameplay. To quote Nicolas Singos and Jean-Dominique Gasquel on their paper titled Soundtracks for Computer Animation, Sound Rendering and Dynamic Environmental Occlusions, they say, sound is processed by digital filtering while the animation is computed. Thus, no post-processing is needed, and the soundtrack is directly synchronized with the video signal. This is how audio for Risk of Rain is processed. The game uses various techniques to compute the acoustics of how sound would travel in a world as complex and as fast-moving as this game. Let's listen to this clip. Next, let's look at how Risk of Rain uses its OST. Just like in the first game, there is a sort of level theme followed by a boss theme that starts playing when the teleporter is reached. This audio is non-diegetic in contrast to the diegetic sounds that we were previously discussing. This juxtaposition of the soundtrack and environmental ambiance helps create this immersion. Pay attention to how as soon as the player activates the teleporter, the game quickly changes the song playing to reflect this intense moment. Now, saying that the entire original soundtrack of Risk of Rain 2 is diegetic would be false. If you listen closely to each of the stage themes, a smaller, mechanical instrument voice speaks within the melody, playing whenever your character gets closer to the teleporter. See if you can listen to it here. As you can see, this smaller voice is processed with the same 3D audio technology that the environment is processed with, but is a part of the music. It is debatable whether or not this sound is actually played within the game world, but it is clearly a mix of diegetic and non-diegetic ideas within the sound. To help complete this project, I reached out to the composer of the Risk of Rain soundtracks, Chris Christodoulou, with questions on the composition process. One of the first questions I had asked him was basically, how did the jump from 2D to 3D change your composition process? After which he replied saying that 1. The change of dimensions didn't have any particular impact to how the music is composed on a purely technical level, and 2. In a manner of speaking, we wanted to add a dimension in music. The music for Risk of Rain 2 is the natural evolution of the music from the first game, both artistically and also pragmatically, since this time I have the means to realize these more intricate compositions. To Christodoulou, the difference between the two game soundtracks is merely in the complexity of arrangement. To the gamer, these small changes in design method drastically change the outcome and experience while playing. Two tracks show this difference well: Arctic Oscillation from the Risk of Rain original soundtrack and Antarctic Oscillation from the Risk of Rain 2 original soundtrack. Keep in mind the topics we've discussed earlier, like is this song a stage or a boss theme, and is this song meant for immersion or meant to be adrenaline pumping? In conclusion, the Risk of Rain series uses its audio much more purposefully than other games. In the first game, it uses the combination of its soundtrack and ambient noise to immerse the player within the game world while still using mono-processed environmental sounds. While in the second game, Risk of Rain 2, the game uses a combination of diegetic and non-diegetic 3D processed sounds for its ambient noise and its soundtrack to further the immersion built by the first game. I'll leave the end of this presentation with my favorite song from both soundtracks, Coalescence.